to order here. Thank you for recording. I will call the meeting to order here on Thursday, April 28th in the year 2022 at 1:04 p.m. Thank you all for joining in today. We'll go ahead and do a quick roll call here with the COBAAC members. I myself, Nicholas Radin, am here and present. And then I'll turn it over to Amanda. Amanda, you may be double muted. Okay, I know I see her here, so we'll just call that as a present. Ashley Money.
Hi everyone, Ashley Money, Strategic Programs and Partnerships Coordinator for Cascades East Transit and COBAAC member.
Thank you. Then we'll move to Corey.
Hi everyone, this is Corey Sparks. I'm the Operations and Grants Manager at Central Oregon Land Watch and a COBAAC member.
Thank you. And then Ashley Schaefer has joined us as well.
Hello, Ashley Schaefer, COBAAC member. Was there anything else I was supposed to say?
Nope, you're good. And then I think that's it from our COBAAC membership team. I will, the next part of our agenda is to go through the land acknowledgement portion. And I will turn that over to Sharissa.
Thanks, Nick. So I have the opportunity to read the City of Bend land acknowledgement. And with that, I will go ahead and get started. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north of the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Wanalama, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and care for this land.
Thank you, Sharissa. And then I'll just kind of go through a quick roll call of our guests today, as well as our traditional individuals on this as part of COBAAC. We have Lisa and Sharissa with the City of Bend. We also have Eric King present today for our city manager, and we also have our City Council representative Barbara Campbell on as well. And we have a presentation later from Jacob as well from the City of Bend. So welcome everybody. And going to the next portion of our agenda, we'll go through and do approval of the minutes from our March 24th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review and to provide any comments on that? Okay. I guess we can go through and do a quick motion. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve those minutes from our March 24th meeting? I approve the March 24th meeting minutes as currently written. Is there a second?
Ashley Money, I'll second.
Okay. Any comments or anything other than that? I don't believe so. So we'll go ahead and do a procedural vote here. All those in favor of approving the minutes from March, say aye, or raise your hand, or acknowledge otherwise. All those opposed? No opposition? And all those abstain? None. Meeting minutes are for our March 24th meeting have been hereby passed. Perfect. Moving on to our public comment period. We do not have any attendees from the public today, but I would like to open it up to anyone else here that's not part of COBAAC if they have any comments or anything to add to our agenda today.
Nick, I don't see anybody in the attendees list aside from those who have already identified themselves.
Okay. All right. If there are no public comments, we will proceed into COBAAC Business as item number 5 on our agenda. I would like to announce, unfortunately, that Ashley Money is resigning, and this will be her last meeting this month. And I want to thank Ashley for her time and her positivity and the connection to CET, and that's a critical piece of our COBAAC mission. And I want to say thank you to her and for her time and her commitment.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. I'm furiously searching for someone to replace me. So hopefully we'll be able to find someone to apply and hopefully, serve on COBAAC. But I'm moving to Fort Lauderdale. So if any of you end up in Florida, please come by and say hi. But it's been a pleasure serving. Thank you to everybody.
It's been great having you. I hope you enjoy your move and everything.
I wanted
Thanks,
to mention some of the
Ashley.
things that she was involved in. Ashley's first meeting was September 24th of 2000. She suggested and invited presenters. In June of 2021, she invited CET co-worker Andrea, I'm not sure how you say your last name, transportation director, the update for the CET mobility hub station design. And then in October of 21, she invited her boss, Derek Hoffbauer, to share the presentation of the update on the new Northeast and Southeast Bend bus stop design. Letters of support she was involved in. February 2020, there was a letter sent to affordable housing and to increase the number of accessible and adaptable units and support a policy change after the City Council's approval. Encouraging the committee to ensure development can provide access to dial-a-ride with the critical importance of affordability housing location due to limited public transportation options and bus infrequency, limited schedules, and underserved areas. Encouraging the committee to appoint at least one representative of the disabled community and one person who currently is or has in the past been a beneficiary of the Affordable Housing Committee, ensuring representation for the long-term success of affordable housing, their goal. And then the last one here, she was involved in a letter to the city manager supporting the city's grant application to fund the project development and for the Drake Park footbridge and ADA access recommendations. So you made a difference. Thank you. We're so happy to have you, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Those were a lot of things. I don't know how much I was involved in a lot of it, but I do appreciate it. And I will say it's been a blast too. I was really happy to work on the charter. So kudos to that working group. It was a pleasure to work on that project.
Ashley, I'm going to miss you so much. It's so much fun working with you on COBAAC. It was really nice to get to know you.
Likewise, Corey.
And Ashley, just to echo everything everybody else has said, you will definitely be missed. So look for an email, though. I know you and I have talked about making sure we maintain that connection with transit, which I think is important. So, you know, maybe as your last act on COBAAC, helping us find somebody good to replace you from CET would be greatly appreciated, and wishing you the best in the very different climate you're heading into.
Thanks, Teresa.
Yep. Thank you very much, Ashley. You will be missed. I'm excited for your next adventure. Our vice chair is not able to attend today. He may be able to call in here shortly, but no other updates from my end. So I'll turn it over to Sharisa for COBAAC Business Updates. She's got about 4 of those to discuss.
Yeah, we've been busy over the last little bit. So want to give you an update on a couple of things. I think I will start with the stipends. So I did send a link to everybody here to the recording for Anna Allen, our Equity and Inclusion Director's presentation to the City Council Stewardship Subcommittee. The subcommittee was supportive of the information Anna presented, and so that was elevated to City Council. On the 20th of April, we had the first reading of the code change that would be necessary to support providing stipends for committee and commission members. And the second and final reading of that will take place. To give a little bit of context, you know, in terms of what you can potentially expect moving forward. So the stipends are not intended to be compensation. They're really intended to help meet the council goal of breaking down barriers to participation in local government. So to offset some of the costs that folks might have when they volunteer to participate on committees and commissions like COBAAC. So thinking about things like transportation costs, childcare costs, stable Wi-Fi costs, those types of things. The council, with advice from Anna, is currently considering a $30 to $40 per meeting stipend. That will account for some of the differences in time commitments and those types of things. Those will be capped annually at $500 per year. And the reason for that cap is so that the city can continue to maintain volunteer liability insurance on each person who chooses to volunteer. So in terms of getting the money to folks, the reimbursement, the stipends, what we're looking at are cash cards. Those would be provided either at each meeting or quarterly, kind of depending on the capacity of the administrative staff supporting a particular committee or commission. We also want to maybe destigmatize the stipends, and it's going to be really everybody can participate unless they opt out. So it's something available to everybody. And if somebody decides that this isn't a support that they need, they can do that. And the paperwork for it would be part of the onboarding process. That being said, for those of you who are already on COBAAC, we would be looking at that paperwork at a later time, different obviously than your onboarding because you're already here. There is kind of a 30-day wait after that second reading with City Council before we could roll this out. So we're looking potentially at early June for the rollout of these stipends. And I do want to just, make everybody aware we're viewing this as a pilot. While we definitely want to reduce these barriers long-term, we want to be thoughtful and learn from the experience. So we will be collecting data over the coming year to see if the stipend had the intended effect of making it easier for folks, particularly from marginalized communities, to be able to participate in city government. So using that data to come back and say, did it work? Did it do we wanted it to do? Are there changes that we need to make? And those kinds of things. So I think maybe I will pause my comments on that there and see if folks have questions based on where we're at with that stipend discussion right now.
And is that stipend that would be for going forward and not retroactive for previous ones? Is that correct?
Correct. So going forward from the date that it goes into effect again in early June. Great question, Nick. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the COBAAC members?
And would this include also work group meetings, or is this just the primary COBAAC monthly meeting? Great question. So really any meeting of the committee or commission that you're serving on. So had this been in place prior to the work group around the charter, it would have applied to that meeting. So it's really every meeting up to that $500 kind of cap. Great question. Other questions?
I just don't have a question, but I just want to comment again that I think it's really fantastic that everyone in the city council is working on this. It's really great.
Thank you for that. I think that's all that I had on stipends, Nick, unless there are other questions folks want to, or comments. Okay. Would it be okay, Nick, then if I transition to an update on the demographic questionnaire?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So I am happy to report that the demographic questionnaire that y'all had an opportunity to give feedback about is now live. So if you were to go to the committee commission page and click on the apply now option, after filling out the application for a committee and commission position, you do have an opportunity now to provide optional information about demographic information. So much like the pilot approach to stipends, we'll be using that information as folks provide it to see if including those questions helped us with our efforts to diversify representation on our various committees and commissions. That being said, I'm interested in some feedback for folks here on COBAAC. Certainly that's a tool for people who choose to apply moving forward, but I'm curious how y'all would like to approach collecting information for the current COBAAC membership. I have some ideas, I'd be happy to share those, but I thought before I did, I'd put it out to this group to see how you would recommend Lisa and I move forward with making sure current COBAAC members are aware that they have an opportunity to provide that information if they would like to.
I feel made aware of it right now that we have that opportunity. Is that kind of what you were?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. I apologize, Corey. I think I realized I wasn't as clear as I could have been. So making you aware of it and then making sure you have, I think what I'm really trying to get at is what tool would you like us to use to get that questionnaire to you? Do you want to try using the online form? It would require answering those application questions. We've had some other discussions about, should we email you a paper copy and you send it back to us? Do you want to do, maybe a Survey Monkey or something? And there are some confidentiality considerations, I think, with the last two. The way that the current online tool is set up is those responses are completely separated from the name of the person filling out the application. But yeah, that's really what I was trying to get at, Corey, is how would you like to approach submitting that information? So yeah, looking for some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think this is John. I think an online questionnaire works fine. I think that'd be the easiest. Just because I don't really have facts or now. The idea of PDF and then printing it out and then sending it back in seems a little arduous, but I mean, that's a first world problem, I guess. But yeah, I think online questionnaire would be perfectly fine.
And can I drill down on that just a little bit, John? So there are really two approaches that we've considered. One is we create a questionnaire that's just for the COBAAC members. The other one is that we leverage the tool that is already online. Again, that would require kind of going through some of those application questions and getting to the end where you could then submit the demographic questions. So maybe, and I think with that, I see Jacob has got his hand raised, and I know he's probably got a better IT solution than anything I'm recommending. So I'll pause and see what Jacob's thoughts.
Thanks, Charissa. We could basically take that form that does exist. I could copy it and just remove that first page too, if you want to go with that approach. And so you wouldn't have to answer all those first sets of questions. We could kind of tailor it to your needs too, if we want to take that approach. It's pretty straightforward and easy.
So John, does something like that sound consistent with what you're getting at as far as an online form?
Yes.
Okay. And maybe what I'll do is work with Jacob, unless other COBAAC members have other ideas or thoughts, and we can kind of parse those two. And then I'll send a link to the group to complete those. Again, it's completely optional, so you don't have to, and we will absolutely disaggregate that information. It won't be connected to you personally. And then we can use that moving forward to make sure we're really thoughtful about what our recruitment outreach looks like for COBAAC. Thank you for that, Jacob. Any other thoughts or comments from the COBAAC membership about the demographic questions?
Yeah, I guess when we get that information and we get that database, is that completely anonymous, or is it does it actually tie into the individual who is it known who filled out that questionnaire?
Good question. We can set it up so that it is just anonymous. I think it'll just like assign a number or some sort of like ID for each person who submits it. We can make sure that names and emails and stuff like that are removed from what is being submitted.
Thanks, Jacob. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, well, look for an email from me in the near future with a link again to the optional demographic questionnaire. We'll make sure that it is completely anonymous, and then we will leverage that information moving forward in our recruitment efforts. I think that's all that I've got on that one, Nick.
Okay. And that ties in nicely to the next item, which is the new member recruitment update.
Y'all are going to be tired of hearing my voice in not too long. You know, Lisa and I and the city in general, I know Eric is supportive of this, want to make sure that we have a full COBAAC committee, because there's real value in having a lot of voices at the table. So we've been working on details to get the recruiting information out. That should be posted. We'll have a posting out early next week to let folks know that we have vacancies on COBAAC. Lisa and I plan to leave that posting open and available for applicants through the 27th of May. And at that point, we'll kind of pull all that information down and start to make some decisions about how to move forward with the interview process. That being said, y'all are an important part of our recruitment efforts. So we will be sending another email with that recruitment information. And my ask for this group would be to please consider sharing that with any groups or particular individuals, definitely at CET, who might be interested in serving on COBAAC. I think we will have about 5 positions available. So there's a lot of opportunity there, to help fill the positions with folks interested in advocating for a more accessible community. I think with that, those are all the updates that I've got as far as the posting. We will be doing interviews hopefully in early June. My hope would be then that we will be appointing folks or recommending folks to be appointed to Eric and have those folks appointed by the June COBAAC meeting. I'm still finalizing details about what that interview process is going to look like, and maybe reaching out to this group for some feedback and potential participation in that moving forward. So with that, I think as far as the posting and timeline and interview process is all that I've got at this point. Do any of the COBAAC members have feedback or questions?
Is there any sort of flyer we could whip up? Because I'm imagining might be nice to put it up at like Juniper or Larkspur or other community gathering spots.
Great question, John. So we do have a vacancy notice, and we are going to put out a news release, and we will take a look at what options might exist to post those in locations throughout the community.
We do have a flyer.
Me? I mean, I could whip something up on Canva or something like that.
I think it sounds like we've got a flyer, right, Lisa? I heard you correctly. I know we've got the vacancy notice and we've got the media release, but we'll take a look at what other options might exist to create something that might be more flyery to put out in the community. I think the other thing I'm thinking a lot about is using social media to help get information, certainly the city's website, those kinds of things. So we'll definitely keep this group updated as we finalize that recruitment process. Thank you for that feedback, John. Other thoughts or questions on recruitment? Okay.
Okay. All right. One more update that you have, Sharissa, is the charter revision work group, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so I think fortunately we've got a lot of folks on the call today who are participating in that meeting. So definitely John, Amanda, Ashley, Moni, jump in at any time. But we did meet as a group on April 8th. Reviewed the charter. I think there were some really great suggestions provided. So I don't know, John, Ashley, Amanda, if any of y'all want to share kind of highlights or insights, and then I can come back and talk about what a process looks like for getting those recommendations back to the full COBAAC.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really stuck out to me when we were working on the doc was the updating the language of membership, where it's, it had the standard, oh, you got to have 2 people from business, you got to have this, you got to have that. And it was kind of like, well, why is it that way? And so I like that we were able to trim it back. So it's more like, no, we just need people who are invested in Bend or live in Bend and are excited about working for COBAAC is basically it.
Yeah, Ashley, Moni here. I would also add that, we talked a lot about just the language that was used. I think a lot of it just seems kind of flat on the page and just needed a little bit of a refresh so that the information about what COBAAC is and what COBAAC does is as exciting as we think it is. So we talked a lot about, using more, active language, just things that were a little bit more engaging to describe, describe COBAAC.
You guys also mentioned adding equity into the language as well. I think that was Nick's idea.
Yeah, so there will be language in the charter definitely aimed at equity. And I know I appreciated Amanda's feedback about, how we kind of articulate the disability experience and updating that language to be a little bit more current and inclusive. So I think there are some exciting changes that this group can consider. So in terms of the timeline, Lisa and I did send out an updated draft to each of the folks who served on that work group. They're taking a look at the content right now to make sure that we really captured what they were hoping would be reflected in that document. Hoping to get all of their final kind of reviews or pieces of feedback incorporated by mid-May, and then bringing that charter, that updated draft, to the full COBAAC membership in the May meeting for consideration of potentially elevating that to Eric for his consideration and potentially signing off. I think any other comments or questions from the COBAAC membership? Ashley, John, Amanda, anything that we've missed?
No, I will just add for the group that this was a total team effort, and we spent a lot of time talking about like a single word. So this was, a slow and steady wins the race kind of discussion for what we met for 2 hours, right? So although we're being a little quiet right now talking about, what it was that we ended up doing, I think that the group's going to be pretty impressed when they see the marked up new version. A lot of love went into this updated document.
Yeah, I would just add that it was a lot of work, and I really appreciate everyone's input. And we all understand that it is, a living document that's going to change over time, especially with vocabulary. But this is a great start.
Thank you to all of you for spending time. I know everybody's really busy, so definitely appreciate the feedback and looking forward to discussion, hopefully next month, about where we go from here. And I think, Nick, that is all that I have for now.
Okay. We can, next on our agenda is the City 101 with Eric King. So I'll let Eric, you go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you, Nick. Lisa, did you want to share your screen, or did you want me to do that? I'm prepared if you want me to walk through the PowerPoint or whatever's easiest. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Sharing yours.
No problem. So give me a second while I pull this up. Okay. Are you all seeing the presentation? Great. Well, thank you for having me. As I mentioned a couple of months ago, my goal is to really establish a more sustained, consistent connection to the City of Bend Accessibility Advisory Committee. And so myself or somebody from the City Manager's Office, we are committed to attending meetings, being a more active link. And as a part of that, I'm really big in context and making sure that we all sort of see the bigger picture of how we are operating as one city. That's something that's really important to me. There's so many things that are going on in a fast-growing community that it takes a team approach to address all of the growth and issues that come with that growth. And so it's really important to us that we have a governance structure that reflects that. So what I want to do is just first kind of center us around how COBAAC fits within this model. So you can
Eric,
see from this.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm not sure what we're seeing right now is the current slide as well as what the next slide will be. Is that what you're hoping to show? And if okay.
Let me
And your notes.
Hopefully you're seeing that now. Just the one slide. No?
I'm still seeing. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. So this graphic represents the universe of the boards, committees, and commissions that are both appointed by City Council, as well as those that are appointed by the City Manager's Office. So it includes COBAAC that you see there on the left-hand side. We've recently concluded an emergency homelessness task force in partnership with Deschutes County. And then we're working our way through some code updates to increase the opportunity for shelters, temporary housing, and other hardship housing to be cited, given our housing crisis here in Bend. So there's the city manager appointed committees, and then the council, and I don't want to somehow give the impression that there's different status. The city manager appointed committees versus the city council committee meetings, it's more about just efficiency and flexibility. So the more permanent committees that are appointed by council, there's also some ad hoc committee councils, and it just depends on policy level that needs to be created. So if there is significant policy work and there needs to be a direct line of sight with the city council, then the council tends to appoint those committees. Those committees that are really more influencing operations and how we're doing business tend to be more on the administrative side, and that's with the city manager. And I'll talk a little bit about that distinction between council and policymaking roles versus in the city manager's office and the day-to-day operations in a bit. But just to give you a sense of the categories here, so we have standing committees that include our budget committee that meets periodically, but pretty intensely every 2 years to develop our 2-year budget. I'll kind of work my way around. The Environment and Climate Committee provides oversight over our Community Climate Action Plan that was recently developed. Landmarks Commission is all about historic preservation. The Neighborhood Leadership Alliance is represents the 13 neighborhood associations in Bend. And then neighborhood associations, they have some formal recognition from a land use perspective and getting notices for development issues, things like that. The city helps provide some resources for those neighborhoods. Planning Commission is kind of more of a regulatory function where that planning commission reviews changes to our development code and zoning code, as well as just specific applications for development, everything from a new subdivision to a master plan community or like a OSU Cascades. Urban renewal, right now that urban renewal is synonymous with the city council, same members as city council. That urban renewal is state designated oversight over tax increment financing. So that's property taxes that are in a certain area. Any new property taxes generated in a specific area stay invested in that area to help pay for infrastructure or other improvements needed to revitalize an area. Right now the city's got 3 urban renewal districts, including our core. A lot of you have probably heard of the area in and around 3rd Street, and then Juniper Ridge to the north and Murphy Crossing to the south. The Human Rights and Equity Commission, one of our newest board committee or newest commissions, that is really intending to provide oversight over the work the city's doing around equity in all fronts, from everything from developing an equity framework, equity lens to be evaluating our decisions, to also being a place for complaints of discrimination and a process that's being developed for that. The Transportation Bond Oversight Committee, so that you're starting to get into some different colors. That, as well as the Juniper Ridge Management Advisory Board, actually that has completed, so that they've finished their work. Transportation Bond Oversight is technically an ad hoc committee, but it's actually going to have quite a lifespan. So the bond that the voters approved to make transportation improvements, the construction of that bond is going to last about 10 years. So that Bond Oversight Committee will be probably around for a majority of that 10-year period. And then, as I mentioned, the city manager advisory boards to the left. Just a little bit of background, and I'm going to talk about kind of how the committees represent community values and how they connect to city core services in a moment. But just first to ground everybody in the governance structure in terms of putting it all together are the city council members, and the 7 council members are elected for 4-year terms, and they're elected every 2 years. So we're coming up upon election cycle with the Mayor Russell's she's noted publicly she's not running again, so that position is an open position. Councilor Keebler has made an announcement that she plans to run for that position, as well as a former councilor, Chris Piper. Jenna Goodman Campbell and Barb Campbell are also those positions and are up for election this year. The other 4 that you see there have 2 more years left on their terms. Many cities have wards or districts that represent a geographic area. Councilors might be representing a geographic area. That's not what Bend is about. Bend has citywide representation. So just like you have been working on your charter for your committee, the city council is governed by a charter as well. The unique thing about the city's charter is that it can only be changed by a vote of our community members. So the charter was first put in place in 1911 in Bend, and it's been changed 5 times. Most recently, it was changed in 2018. And so in the charter, just like your charter, it sets forth how we function, the role of city council versus the city manager, the election terms, how somebody gets elected, the process, all of that's in the charter. And then stemming from that, the council also has some rules that in terms of how they govern themselves, manage their meetings. We just recently went through a process to update those as well. And it's really important work. So thank you, big thank you to those that are working on your charter, because that really that's the how. We can't underestimate how important it is, especially in today's environment when we can become easily divided and there's a lot more conflict, and having a process, a rudder to guide you through that conflict, that's what a charter helps us do. I feel like there's some missing. Yeah, this is only getting every other slide for some reason. I wonder why it's not picking up. The other slides, it's just skipping around. So there's some other graphics that are missing for some reason. I don't quite know why, but there is a graphic that I wanted to share. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I can just talk through it. And it should work that way. But we picture the Mount Bachelor, the backdrop, and some clouds on the screen. And what we're trying to do is articulate our core services as a city. So for those of you, I think we all get very focused on our departments, the areas that we're kind of in charge with. And again, I'm trying to make sure that everybody knows that we're part of one city, and to understand the connectivity and the relationships between the community and the city's core services. So that's what this graphic is attempting to do. So our core services include 3 basic things: infrastructure, so that's water, sewer, streets. The city operates. We do have 2 private water providers, but other than that, we're a fairly full service city when it comes to the infrastructure that you see both on the ground with transportation and beneath the ground that many folks don't see, all the pipes to bring up water to the city and then to dispose of it on the other side. And then community and economic development. So that's the work that we do to ensure that we've got enough land for growth. So everything from urban growth boundary that really is predicated upon a population forecast that we receive from Portland State University, along with other cities in Oregon, that predict what growth is going to look like. We are projected to have 120,000 folks here in Bend by the year 2030. 150,000 by the year 2040. And so ensuring that we have enough land, and then that land is appropriately zoned for jobs and for housing, for all types of housing, all types of jobs. So that long range planning work that's done in our community development department, that is about managing the growth and the infrastructure needed to support that growth. And then just making sure our buildings that are being built are safe and accessible. So our building department, reviewing codes, making sure our standards and specifications all meet certain criteria. And then once it's built, to make sure it's that it maintains, you know, a basic sense of health and safety. So we have code enforcement to deal with, you know, challenges that we might have in our right of way or on private property that are causing fire life safety issues. And then also is public safety, police and fire. That's the third kind of core service. We also offer a municipal court that is more kind of infractions on our municipal code. It's not criminal. That's done through the county circuit court. And then I would say kind of wrapping all of those three core service areas is our governance system, which includes city council and the city manager's office and IT and finance and legal, all the support services needed to run a city, to make sure that there's good financial stewardship, that we're compliant with state and federal laws, that we are accessible to our community, that we're reaching out, sharing information. The communications department is part of that. So that really kind of gives you an outline of what the city is doing. We don't, what's unique about Bend is we have a separate parks and recreation district. We have a separate library district. Of course, the county offers more public health and social services, in addition to serving the rural areas with planning and building safety. And then in addition to that, you know, there's the sort of special districts, irrigation districts, other forms of local government. So, you know, on the West Coast, we tend to have more decentralized local government than you might find on the East Coast, where, you know, a city like New York City, for example, is running hospitals, schools, parks, libraries, everything much more centralized. You see less of that and more special taxing districts at the local level. One of the things that's also unique is our tax system to support those local services in Oregon is somewhat restrictive. So much like California, there's been property tax reform or limitations caps that have been put in place by voters, by citizen initiated ballot measures. So those have really restricted Bend's ability to sort of keep pace with some of our core services, particularly police, fire, public safety services are provided by the general fund, which most of the revenue in the general fund are from property taxes. So those are capped. And our tax rate in Bend has not changed since 1981. It's $2.80 per 1,000 tax assessed value. So we do benefit from some growth, but the growth is not happening as a result of growth in property values. As we all know, property values are increasing at a very fast pace in Bend. Your taxes do not increase at that same rate. The maximum that property taxes can increase is 3%. So the new growth has brought some growth in property tax revenue, but it accounted for about 2% last year. There was the natural 3% growth and then the 2% just with the new construction. So you're talking 5% revenue growth year over year, typically in our general fund, which is, it's better than a lot of cities, but unfortunately it's not keeping pace with our community as it's growing and the expectations for city services. So it's a constant balance of ensuring that we're delivering services that are aligned to community values, but we can't do it all. And so prioritization and goal setting is really important. So the other slide that's part of that I'm not sharing is because it's not for some reason coming up, is an iceberg analogy of what's below the water line is like when we look at an iceberg is a lot of our core services that people just expect, the responding to calls for service, responding to or processing building permit activity, maintaining and operating our water and sewer systems, all of that. And then what's above the water line are the more visible things that a lot city council gets elected to address, things like housing and homelessness and making sure that we're good environmental stewards, that we also are partnering with our other agencies to solve larger community issues, that ensuring that we are offering or that equity is at the center of everything that we do. So it's more about setting the tone, the culture that's above the waterline and making sure that there is a line of sight to the city's day-to-day operations. And the mechanism we do that through is through good goal setting. And that's done every 2 years following an election cycle where the council works with boards, committees, commissions. And so part of the reason for sharing this presentation with you is just to to plant the seed that our next goal setting cycle will take place in January. But prior to that, there's opportunities for all of our boards, committees, and commissions that are really part of our governance structure to help the council as they're new in their positions, to make sure that you share what's important from an accessibility perspective. And that gets factored into some of the council goals and what the things that we need to work on to make Bend even better. So that goal setting happens not only with board, committee, commission input, we also do a statistically valid survey to hear from community members that we might not be part of our governance structure. They're just living their lives and they have feedback to share. As a leadership team, we also share important information about things that we need to do to comply with state regulations around land use or other things that are coming that we need to factor in as we set goals. And so we do kind of like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that help inform council goals. And then of course the councilors themselves have just run campaigns, or some of them have, and so they're really attuned to the issues that they're hearing about from community members. That all gets factored in. We do an offsite retreat and start coming up with themes. And then we go back and forth of here's the big picture of where council wants, what they want to accomplish. And then as their employee, as the city manager, my job is to leverage the organization and the resources to ensure that we're meeting those goals and developing a work plan. And so detailed actions, strategies, actions, projects that help accomplish those strategies and actions and then ultimately need resources that helps to inform our 2-year budget that we propose to the city council in June. So our fiscal year starts July 1st and goes through June 30th. It's in odd years. So we're in the middle of our 2-year budget right now. So as I said, in the next couple of months, we'll start gearing up for the next biennial budget, start soliciting input from our boards, committees, commissions, and others, and then start developing those council goals. And then it takes about 4 or 5 months to solidify them, put them together with the budget, and then we go through a budget approval process. So that's the basic mechanics of how it works. Again, I apologize for the slideshow not sort of being comprehensive or the missing pieces. So hopefully that gives you enough of a sketch. I don't want to talk. I know this is a group that's been around. Some of you have been on and are very informed of what the city is doing, and but others may not. So this is just an opportunity to kind of give you that foundation that hopefully will help you see how this all works and how you can influence the direction of the city. So I'll take any questions from you all, or happy to go into more detail in any of those points that I covered. I would also, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just have a question. Yeah, you mentioned that 1981 was the last time rates were voted upon or increased. What is that process like, and is there any plan to increase that with, obviously with rising inflation and the growth of the city?
Yeah, so the city does have a few options to address that. So that rate, that $2.80, that's our permanent rate. We cannot change that. The only way to undo that would be to ask the voters to change the state's constitution. So think of our charter. State has a constitution that talks about how its governance. All these tax measures that put those limits are baked into the city's constitution. So it's not like we can just go to the legislature and say, hey, can you undo all these and give us more local control and flexibility of how we raise property tax, look at property tax revenue at a local level. That's not possible unless, and typically in something like this, there's 2 ways to make changes to the state's constitution. One, community members can, if you get enough signatures, can get something on the ballot by just sort of a grassroots effort. Or the legislature has the ability to forward something on for voter consideration. Probably the more likely scenario when you talk about undoing some of these things, because it's very unpopular, right? Because people are going to say, I don't want to raise taxes. It's going to be really difficult to vote on something like this. That's where you have to get bipartisan support. The legislature most likely would be path that you would choose to be able to put something like that on the ballot. And then of course you just then got to get the voters to approve it. And a lot of there's been some polling to do this, and polling is not very favorable. And I think the politics in the legislature just haven't been favorable. So it's been a really big challenge to do the big picture tax reform that really needs to happen. And Oregon's unique because we have property tax. Of course, as you all know, we don't have sales tax. Typically have 3 legs of the taxing stool to provide more consistency. We just have 2 legs, property and income tax. We do have a fairly high income tax in Oregon relative to other states, and a very low property tax, and then this, no sales tax. So really big problems with the structure. So cities can, though, mitigate to some degree. And so the 2 options for cities are general obligation bonds. So that's where if there's resources needed to build capital, so infrastructure, facilities, things that actual structures, that's called a general obligation bond. And so we've been successful recently, like with the transportation bond. So we can raise money for a specific purpose, but it's a project, right? The other opportunity is not a changing of a permanent rate, but what is called an operating levy. So you can ask the voters for funds to help increase staffing, but it only is for 5 years. Then you have to go back to the voters and say, if you want to keep that sustained level of funding, you have to go back. And sometimes that's a no, and that can be very disruptive to operations. The city does have a operating levy for fire. So we've asked the voters beginning in 2013 or 14, and we've renewed it once, and we'll be renewing it again in 2023 to provide needed fire and EMS staff to respond to our growing calls for service, and something council is just dealing with right now, and talking about the need for that. So, but they're not great ways they're not permanent solutions. They're just things that the city can do to kind of get by. And then of course, I guess the other piece outside of, and what Bend has been doing is for all the other services except police, fire, and streets are pretty much fee for service related departments functions. So for example, our community development department, they process all the permit, all the growth that we're seeing right now. That is a fee for service, which is a little different. A lot of cities have a healthier general fund. They don't have quite the low tax rate that Bend has. So a lot of cities will say, we're going to use some of our general fund or discretionary revenue to sort of buy down the permit cost as part of an economic development strategy. And we don't have that. So we often get complaints, your fees are so high, your fee, and it's, well, yes, because we are completely fee dependent. We don't have the available resources in the general fund to sort of to subsidize that function. So, and then same thing with our infrastructure, our utility system, water, sewer, and stormwater, completely paid for by the utility bills that you pay every month. As well as new development that comes in, there's an assessment through system development charges or development impact fees that get paid at the time of a new subdivision going, a house being built or a commercial building. They pay an SDC that's based on a formula that is somewhat dictated by state law on how to charge for gross impact, and that those resources can only be used to build new capacity. We can't use those SDC revenues to operate or maintain our infrastructure. Probably a longer answer than you probably wanted, but that's you start talking about city finances and it gets fairly complex. Barb, anything to add to that?
I did think we might add CET, that the state legislature gave CET the ability to become a taxing district. And so that ability is there. CET has not taken advantage of that yet. And that would also require a vote, right, from the voters to take that step. But that's another opportunity that we have to get more permanent funding for our transit system.
Yes, very good point. I should have mentioned that you can form a new taxing district, so that that can, like with transit, that doesn't exist right now. It's a service that we want to enhance and to provide more fund. Right now, we're providing a little bit of general fund dollars, not very much, but if we want more stable local funding, probably the best way to do that is establish a new taxing district, which would have its own elected board governance structure to provide that service. And that's something I know that we're kind of exploring with COIC to do that. Somebody, the Bulletin did like an editorial a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was about taxes or something, and they mentioned me that I love to talk about taxes. I'm not the guy that you want to run into at a party because I'll start going into the property tax system. So you need to stop me. Because it gets me going. It's really a messed up system, and not many people know about it. If anybody wants to talk offline, I'm happy to indulge you on taxes.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and that was very that was great information to know about and how all this works. Cool. Does anyone else have any other questions for Eric today?
Quick question.
We're running
Eric.
a little bit behind schedule.
Oh, well, do we have time for a question then, Nick? I don't have to.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask Eric, so given the fact that it sounds like there are some roadblocks to being able to really get the revenue that the city needs. And I was just curious, I was reading the other day about a city in upstate New York that, they had the opposite problem. Their population's going down, so their tax base is going down, but people expect a certain level of services in their community. And so I was just curious for Bend, if the opposite could be true, where, the community is growing so much, and in order to keep up with the services, that, the city is running into the roadblock to provide that. And I was just curious if you're dealing with that now, how is the city addressing it? And if that's a future problem, maybe how the city could address it.
You described it well. That's exactly what's happening. Growth is not necessarily paying for itself. I think people think, oh, the growth is allowing us to, yes, we can add staff and we can keep up with some of those core services, but what the community is expecting and addressing some of these bigger picture, we just don't have the revenue to do it. And so we have to sort of continue to talk about, we'll be talking with council about a transportation utility fee to help pay for the operational and maintenance side of transportation. It's great that we're building new things with the GO bond, but we still have that general fund problem in streets, police, and fire. That's where it tends to show itself the most, because we're dependent on property taxes, which have this structural problem associated with it. So that's why we go through this council goal setting process. That's our way of prioritizing all of the things and saying we can't do it all, and we have to say no, this is what our focus is, because we just have limited resources, even as a fast-growing city. Yeah.
Hi, Eric.
Yeah,
just a quick question. I'm guessing that if we built more dense housing, the city would get more bang for their buck for property tax and such, correct?
Correct. I mean, I think there's all sorts of data that will show you that's what smart growth is all about. It's about not having sprawl. Actually is really expensive. So you have your city kind of going out into the hinterlands, the road, sewer, water, and the cost to maintain that in perpetuity far outweighs the benefit, the tax revenue that you get. So you can do all sorts of financial modeling that show smart growth is, this idea of complete communities that get folks that have higher intense uses of land. So you can call it density. I also like to make sure that, because sometimes that people get triggered by that word. I think it's more comprehensive than that. It's having complete communities that are amenitized, that you've got not just the density, but also open space and other amenities that people enjoy and have a healthy lifestyle too. That really is from a financial, it's not only it's good planning because it helps give people more transportation options, more mobility options, et cetera, that it also is best, it provides the optimum revenue needed to sustain a city. So you're exactly right. And I see, Barb, do you have something to add on that?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is back to the general obligation bonds. I was just going to specifically say that the city of Bend has only taken out geo bonds for transportation, but one geo bond I'm interested in looking into is for housing. Portland did a geo bond for housing, isn't that right, Eric? So,
oh, sorry, I mean, yes, you can do a geo bond for housing. And I know that's something that probably will be on the list of consideration in the future years for us here in Bend, for sure.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for all that. Is there any other questions? I know we're kind of tight on time here, and we've still got a few things to go. Okay, we'll proceed to our next item. Jacob Riggle for the City of Bend website presentation. Welcome.
Cool. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Eric, for that all that information. It's always really cool to hear, yeah, about how we're all funded and what a complex situation we're in here in Oregon. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to take this opportunity, share my screen. I don't use Zoom very often, so bear with me. Sure. Yeah, so again, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Jacob Riggle. I'm the web and graphics coordinator here at the city. I'm embedded in the communications department. I'm joined by Heather Ward. She's a project manager here who's helping me out with this project that I wanted to introduce to you all, this website improvement project. The reason I want to bring it up, so it's a council goal, and we really need help on this. We want to improve the website, and we want to gather as much information from the community as we can in order to make the website something that's usable for everybody. So starting at a high level, as I mentioned, this comes from a council goal, specifically the accessible and effective city government goal under the strategy to increase efficiency and transparency of city operations through the use of technology, data, and long-term planning. And so then we come to the action item where our goal resides, to use a human-centered design approach to improve the city website and customer service. And so what that means is like a human-centered design approach is really a problem-solving technique or approach that's really laser focused on understanding the perspectives of the people who experience the problem and their needs. So again, that's really why Heather and I are here today, is like, as part of this project, the main part of this project is to make sure that we are getting all the information we can, hearing the pain points from the community, from anybody who's using the website, anybody who's really trying to use actually like any services that the city provides, particularly that reside on the website, so that we can see what we can improve. So see the pain points, see like what's the information that everybody's looking for, so that we can move forward and improve that stuff. So this is kind of just an introduction. We're really at the beginning stages of this project, but just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we are going to be reaching out in the coming months to gather that input from everyone. But going a little deeper too, talking about kind of the scope of the project, what we've identified so far in scope, a couple of items or several items here. One thing is to update the website content to a service perspective again. So really taking a look at what the services are that we provide and the information that's really important to the community, and making that front and center rather than structuring the content on our site in the way that we're structured internally. So kind of taking the onus off of the community to know who does what at the city, and rather structure the content so that you just look for the service and the information that you need, and like make that more front and center and easier to find, not You don't need to know that, for example, code enforcement is under CDD to file a code complaint or something, for example. Another piece that we're looking to address is standardizing email marketing and calendar events. So this is any communication that goes out through the city website, any news that we post through the site, any calendar events, so committee meetings and stuff like that. We want to make sure that we standardize that so that it's easier for people to get the information, to digest that content when we push it out via email and stuff like that. So if you're familiar with one particular committee's calendar events, if you subscribe to receive calendar events from another committee, those should look the same to you. And so, and same thing with like news. We want to just make sure that it's really easy to digest all that content. Let's see, the next piece, we want to develop page templates that meet the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2.1. So accessibility has always been a really important piece for the website, but there are gaps that we see here. And we want to just make sure that as we update the website, that we do keep that top of mind, and that we're making it, and we're just improving it too. And making it easier for city staff as we update the pages, that we can make sure that we're updating it and meeting those accessibility guidelines at the same time. Let's see, next, we want to establish goals for monitoring and ensuring that the website remains user-friendly and accessible going forward too. So through this project, part of the scope is going to be, again, like getting this information from the community, identifying what needs to be changed, making those changes, but we want to make sure that, as soon as we finish this project, that we can maintain all the good work and stuff that we do through this project. And so going forward, we have a good roadmap to guide us. So we want to improve the site navigation. Again, kind of going back to that first bullet point, we want to make the content and services easy to find. And so we want that navigation to be easy to look through, easy to navigate. We want to also increase engagement opportunities. So we want to make it easier for people to find the opportunities that currently exist, as well as provide more opportunities for the community to interact with us, provide input to help us continue to improve the website in particular, and any services or really any issues that the community might have. Use this as a platform to voice those. The next piece, this is a really important one, is to try and rewrite the content at an 8th grade reading level. We want to make sure that the information that we have on the website is understandable for the majority of the population. And so this is kind of an industry best practice to stick to that 8th grade reading level. So not only by doing that will it make it more readable for the for a bigger section of the population, but this actually also helps with other languages too. So Spanish speaking population, for example, we use Google Translate to translate our website. By rewriting the content at an 8th grade reading level, it makes those translation services more effective. So then we can have just a better experience for our Spanish population and any other translations that people who want to translate it into any other language, it'll do a better job if we can address that. Lastly, we want to identify any sub-projects, websites and system services to be improved in a later phase. There's a lot that can be updated on the website, and we want to keep this scope realistic. And like I said, we're going to be gathering a bunch of feedback. And so whatever we can't get to in this project, we want to just make a list and note this so that we can come back to it in the future and make sure that we can kind of categorize and prioritize those projects for future projects to work on. So that leads me to the out of scope items. So these are some items that we've identified already, but we just kind of want to note them, that we won't be able to tackle them as part of this project, but they are issues that we want to touch at some point. So again, analyzing those opportunities that surfaced, we want to identify them, but we won't really have an opportunity to actually get into the details on those yet. Ancillary tools embedded in the website. So this would be like the permitting software, utility billing, things like that, that are just outside of the city website itself. They're just tools that we use and find through the website. We're not going to touch those at this point. That just be a whole, those are their own projects too. So let's see, consistent process flow for creating agendas and managing council and committee meetings. So this is a particular piece that has been identified that could really improve our meeting structures of providing that information on what each committee is doing and any committee meetings, but it's a project in itself too. So we just wanted to note it here again, that it's something that's important, but we just don't have time with this particular project. So then lastly, optimizing tools, web pages, and system services that are identified to need improvement. We'll save that for later projects. So moving on to the anticipated timeline. So this is a little out of date right now, so we're a little behind schedule. So the first phase would be, again, kind of gathering feedback and conducting assessments to determine the core needs of all the website stakeholders. So this is that piece where we would be reaching out to you all and all, city front counter staff, just to gather what are the needs, what are the things that we need to change on the website and update. So we're looking at contracting with a service that does user experience testing and stuff. So they're going to really hopefully do a lot of the legwork for this piece, and I think that's going to free us up and actually help us catch up so that we will be able to stay on task for this entire project. But we're really excited about the proposal we got back from them, and basically the work that they're going to do. They've done a lot of great work with other cities, Gresham, Boulder, for example. So that's going to be super helpful. So after that step, with their help, we'll be developing surveys and usability tests to send out to help gather that information from the community. Have people kind of test out the structure of our website to see if it makes sense. So then May through August, we'll probably be able to stick to that timeline. We conduct those surveys and usability tests within the community. And then from August 1st through October 1st, we'll compile the findings. And then October 1st through the end of the biennium, June 30th, 2023, we will implement the feedback and update the website content. So that's kind of a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Let me stop. How do I stop sharing?
So it should be in the share screen tool on the bottom. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, not a frequent user of Zoom. Apologies.
I just wanted to say thank you, Jacob. That was great. And I would say, that content on an 8th grade reading level is really critical. And it's something at CET that we struggle with. We use the word implement a lot on our website. It's like we should not be using the word implement ever, when talking to the public. And so anyway, I'm really excited to see what this kind of final product ends up looking like. I'm sure we'll be able to take steal some best practices from you all to weave that into our own website. So this is great. Well
Cool.
done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. And that particular piece, like I said, we agree. It's really important. And I'm curious how it's going to go, how to tackle it. I think it's going to be a lot of work, particularly with yeah, we use a lot of jargon and stuff at the city. So like how are we going to replace some of those words that we use all the time? Just kind of, and as we move forward too, I think the biggest challenge that I see, or one of the biggest challenges, is like kind of maintaining that going forward. Like we can make all these changes, but I want to make sure that we're doing enough training and stuff with staff so that they know if we're putting content on the website, we need to write it in such that we need to basically translate it to 8th grade reading level so that it makes sense for the broader population. At least in the beginning, when you first get to a page, you can probably get down into the weeds as you dig deeper and deeper, or you can start using more of that stuff as more like engineers and whatnot are getting into the details of a particular project. But we'll see. Yeah, hopefully we have a good product to showcase by the end of this. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. Yeah, I know we're running short on time, and I plan to address that, I think, in the next agenda item, Nick, when you get to me. But I'm wondering, Jacob, if you can just again clarify for the COBAAC members what participation would look like for them. Is it just completing the survey? Are you looking for folks to like live test the website and provide feedback? Maybe a few more details about what their participation in this project might functionally look like.
Good question. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. Certainly participate, like I said, surveys and stuff. I think, I'm hoping we can do more kind of like interviews, like back and forth stuff in upfront, because sometimes we can ask the questions, and like I said, we're still kind of in the beginning stages and working with hopefully going to be enlisting the help of this particular company to help us out with this. And again, like this is what they do, so I kind of trust that they know the types of questions to ask. So we'll be talking with them. But I think what is really helpful is again, like having that kind of back and forth too, because we can ask the questions, but sometimes more questions come up if we can have a dialogue too, and some things that we don't even know to ask about, in some cases.
Perfect.
So,
and
sorry,
no, I don't, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but and please correct me if I'm wrong with what I'm about to tell the group, but Jacob and I have worked really closely on this project so far, so I'm really confident that we'll be on the same page in making sure that opportunity for feedback comes to COBAAC sooner in the process than later, because I know that early feedback is really important to the group. So Jacob, I don't know if there's anything that I'm overstating there. Definitely please correct me.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
totally. Yeah, like I definitely want to certainly involve you all from the very beginning too. And like I said, yeah, I apologize. It's still kind of up in the air exactly what this is going to look like. But I'll certainly keep in touch, at least with you, Sharissa, about where we're at, so you can kind of communicate to the rest of the group too, as we move forward and as we kind of really focus in and kind of narrow down like what we are actually going to be doing, what it actually looks like. But yeah, but we definitely do want your input for sure.
So if I'm listening to a random podcast and I annoy you and say, hey, so I listened to this half-hour thing about designing websites for people who are colorblind or red-green colorblind, you're okay with me pestering you about that?
Oh yeah, totally. I'm actually partly red-green colorblind, so that in particular would be really exciting for me to hear. Yeah, yes, certainly. Yeah, my email is jriggle@bendoregon.gov too. So yeah, if you do have any kind of specifics too, just feel free to shoot me an email or work through Sharissa, however you want to get in touch with me. Appreciate any input.
Awesome. If there's no other questions, thank you, Jacob, for for that update on the website, and look forward to providing some of that feedback and collaboration with you on those next steps.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Nick, and yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity to share, like, at least this, preliminary, spot where we're at in this, and just kind of plug that we will be reaching out soon for more information. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, Teresa, item number 8 on our agenda is a transition plan feedback. I'll let, since we are running short on time, I'm not sure about the other COBAAC members and if they have an additional few minutes, or if we should try to wrap up here. Does anyone have any feedback on that before we move on?
Yeah, I'll say I want to be really thoughtful about folks' times. I know people have other obligations. So if you're open to continuing, great. If not, we can have maybe a quick conversation and I can follow up again next month. So whatever works best for this group.
Yeah, I guess we've been off for a while. We haven't been.
I can continue for the next 15, 20 minutes or so.
Okay, then I will give you the abridged version. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I think, yep, here we go. All right, hopefully y'all can see what I'm sharing now. So what is on the screen right now is a PowerPoint slide. It says 2021 to 2023 ADA Transition Plan Update. A copy of the transition plan was included in the meeting packet, and it contained a lot of what I'll be talking about here, but definitely wanted to bring this to COBAAC. Y'all are important partners in this process of helping us make the community accessible, and wanted to get your feedback. I am well aware that I live and breathe ADA compliance and accessibility all of the time, and that ADA transition plan may not just roll off of the tongue for everybody and make a whole lot of sense. So I did want to kind of give some context to what we're here talking about today and what I want to get your thoughts on. So Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act says that state and local governments need to create a plan to improve or transition inaccessible facilities like curb ramps, sidewalks that exist in the public way, to transition those from being non-compliant to compliant or accessible for people with disabilities. And as a local government, the city of Bend takes that opportunity very seriously and started doing the work in 2013 to establish our first ADA transition plan. Much like we're doing here today, we put a draft out, got feedback from the community, made some changes based on that feedback, and have issued updates about every other year to coincide with our biennium since then. The focus of our transition plan really has been on those curb ramps. So you'll see that that's a lot of, that is what the majority of the data in the draft transition plan that went to y'all talks about. But just for some additional context, we put the first draft out in 2014, updates in 2016, 2017, then again in 2019. We have historically issued those updates to coincide with our biennial budgeting process. We want to make sure that we're matching outcomes with the dollars to achieve those outcomes. This year was a little bit different. So we had some changes in my role at the city, the pandemic, some general changes in staffing in the city that made it so it took a little bit longer for us to get the update out. But on the other hand, it allowed us to capture a much wider range of data. So you'll see in the tables, for example, that it goes through August 15th rather than the end of the biennial, the fiscal year, excuse me, which would be June 30th. So a little bit of context, if anybody wants to write a transition plan moving forward, about kind of what the etiology of that is. As far as the city's transition plan specifically, it's really broken out into 5 sections. Most of my comments are in the last 2, so they're bolded here on this slide: curb ramp inventory and barrier removal request efforts. But I do want to make just a couple of comments, again, being thoughtful about time, about sidewalk maintenance program development efforts, what we're doing in our streets and operations, now called transportation and mobility, and then within our capital improvement projects, or CIPs. So sidewalk maintenance is something that we've been working on at the city. As you can probably all appreciate, curb ramps are great, but if we don't have sidewalks to connect to those curb ramps, we have incomplete paths of travel. So there's been a lot of conversation, certainly in the city. City Council has made this a priority. Thank you, Councilmember Campbell. Not just in terms of like understanding what we've got, but dedicating the funds to improve them once we're aware of where we're at with those. Based on council's guidance, we've had staff participate in projects to start to think about innovative ideas like the Bloomberg Innovation project, to start to really kind of put a foundation in place to what that improvement program might look like. And a lot of our discussions now are being supplemented with discussions about the climate friendly and equitable communities legislation coming down from the governor. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but certainly still some work to do. And you'll see a lot of that articulated in the plan itself. In terms of actually getting the work done, certainly streets and operations and capital improvement have contributed to that. The transition plan talks about how each of those groups contribute to the numbers that we see at the end, and also talks a bit about the data and where it comes from and what groups are contributing to it, and how they're contributing. So sometimes streets and operations is doing a little bit more, but what we see in the data for this update is you'll see a lot more in the capital improvement, or CIP. There are a lot of acronyms that you'll see in the transition plan. I think maybe to ground some of that, especially for the capital improvement projects. Many of y'all have met Rory Rowan. He's come to a lot of COBAAC meetings. Rory and I worked really, really closely in getting the information for what goes into that CIP section and Appendix B of the plan, and articulating what those projects are going to be. So there's kind of a face with an acronym there, so to speak. In terms of the stuff that I like data, so while I'm excited about all things accessibility, I'm really excited about numbers and want to focus maybe the next 4 or 5 minutes on talking through what is in there and what that means. I think the first thing that I'll say, so I'm showing now two tables. One is our curb ramp inventory. The second is our planned accessibility improvements. I first just want to talk about the non-compliant term that's in the transition plan. There are kind of 2 versions of that. One is we don't have a curb ramp at all, right? Maybe we've got curb, we've got gutter, but we've never put that fanned curb ramp in. Definitely that would be non-compliant. But we also call those fanned curb ramps that are not perpendicular going in 2 directions. We consider those non-compliant as well. More specifically, they don't comply with the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. So we take a really conservative, broad approach to these numbers when err on the side of caution, and you'll see that kind of throughout. I think the other thing that I would say about the data in something that will be a central focus of my work to update this plan moving forward is making sure that the data we are reporting is reliable. The city recently implemented a program called CityView for permitting, and we're hoping to use that for data collection. But because we just have so many folks putting information in, we're still kind of working through making sure the right information goes in and that we can get it out, you know, in an easy way. So what that means in terms of what you're seeing here is we are estimating we've got about 600 curb ramps that are accessible. But because we're conservative in our approach and we don't have all of the individual data points finalized just yet, we continue to say that those are non-compliant curb ramps until we get that in. So the numbers that you're seeing, for example, as of April 15th, 2022, it is closer to 6,500 curb ramps that are compliant. But until we get all of that kind of finalized, we've continued to put them in the non-compliant curb ramp column. So a lot of improvements certainly since 2010, from 1,250 to 5,953. We were about 4,700 curb ramps in the last plan update, so about 1,200. In terms of non-compliant ramps, that number continues to go down, but just the way the math works, it's not like one compliant curb ramp decreases and we have automatically one increase. And some of that's because, as we were just talking, Bend is growing, and much of what we see here is from private development. So it's not always clear kind of until all the data shakes out what that's going to mean from an accessibility perspective. So part of the transition plan, you know, it's retrospective, looking back at what we've done, but it's also prospective. Where do we think we're going to go? And so the next table really estimates what do we think we at the city are going to do. Again, this doesn't include anything about private development. We're thinking we're going to do about 695 curb ramps before the end of the 2023 fiscal year. So before June 30th, 2023, we are going to do a lot of sidewalk improvements. That is a really big number. In total, 78,626 linear feet. It's a significant improvement over what was in the last transition plan. So it's kind of a shift. The last transition plan was really heavy on curb ramps, a little lower on sidewalks. We're seeing that shift here in the data in this transition plan.
Teresa, may I ask a question?
Please.
Ashley Moni, I was curious. So I know we've talked about this before. There's a lot of talk about sidewalk in the transition plan and specific linear feet numbers, about how much sidewalk is going to be done. But I was curious if an actual inventory of the sidewalks as part of these improvements will be developed, because my understanding is that an actual inventory of the sidewalks wasn't actually something that the city had.
So it's yes to both of those parts of what you just said. So yes, we do not currently have an inventory, but, and this is in the transition plan, we are working on a pedestrian master plan right now. That work actually just started in March to start to have conversations about inventorying all of the sidewalks. And then at the same time, the climate friendly and equitable communities has language in it about a sidewalk inventory. So while we don't have one right now, we are actively working to create one to be clear about where those additional opportunities are, and then, how these improvements will contribute. So does that answer your question, Ashley?
Totally. Yeah. I had seen the reference about, building out the pedestrian, sidewalk program. I didn't realize it was part of the larger kind of pedestrian infrastructure plan. So no, that's amazing. I'm stoked to hear it. Selfishly, this is something that on CET's side would be really useful for us when we're building bus stop infrastructure. So yeah, let's just be sure to be in touch as that's being developed.
Yes, absolutely. And so one plug that I will say, and we talked with Nick earlier about what future agendas look like for COBAAC. We actually will have the consultants who are helping us with that pedestrian master plan coming to this group next month, specifically to get your feedback on the pedestrian master plan and how we might prioritize some of those improvements. So absolutely, COBAAC will be front and center in those discussions. And it may be of interest to this group to know that our ADA transition plan is part of the information that's informing that project. So I know we are really short on time, so just really quickly, this table that I'm showing now just kind of projects, assuming we're able to do everything, right? We have all of the money, construction goes exactly as we're planning, we're hoping, all of those things. This is kind of where we think we will be when we get to the end of the 2023 fiscal year. So there is some language, then the last section in the transition plan talks about barrier removal requests. Well, this is, I mean, there is a requirement in the ADA for us to have a barrier removal request program. I think ours is more practical than that. We really do want folks to be able to get around in the community. So our barrier removal request program is intended to provide folks with disabilities who experience disabilities an opportunity to call the city and say, hey, there's this bush that needs to be trimmed back and it's making it so I can't get through, you know, this place, or we're missing a little bit of sidewalk here, or those kinds of things. We typically get about 10 to 20 of those a year. It's been a little bit quiet so far this year. You know, I think COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to that. On the other side of that, though, we did have one year, 2014, where we got a lot of barrier removal requests. 147 requests were submitted by advocates to help make us more aware of areas of opportunity in the public right of way. Among those 147, we've come a long way in making improvements. So there are 105 that have been completed. That's up about 20 from the last transition plan, all the way down to 10 that are still open, which is down about 20 from the last ADA transition plan. What I will say about those that are open, it really has to do with funding, and some of them are really large requests. And so trying to find those synergy opportunities to incorporate them maybe in some of the other community capital improvement projects we're going to be working on. So again, Rory and I are working really, really closely to try to figure out where we might be able to fit those in. I won't say a lot here about looking forward, but what I will tell you is I'm anticipating that November 2023 will be coming back to COBAAC with an update that follows kind of those fiscal year timelines and getting feedback at that point. And I think with that, I will kind of close my comments and quickly see if anybody has any more questions, any feedback, anything that you would like to make the city aware of before we publish this update to our transition plan. All right, well, if you do think of anything, you know how to get a hold of me. Definitely feel free to reach out, even if it's just to ask more questions. I've had some more time to think about it. I'm happy to answer those. And then what I will say, Nick, I know there's a slot on the agenda for me to give an update. I've actually already given it when I talked about what's coming next month. So you're welcome to skip over that update if you would like to.
Okay. I will do that, and I think you have a portion here to give an update on your on the accessibility and equity manager update, but I think you've probably given quite a bit of update in the COBAAC business section. So I think with that we can move on to item number 11 on our agenda, which is the my apologies there, is to move on to council member liaison comments.
I have to go, as much as I would really love to hear Barb's update, but so I just have to run out, and I just wanted to say thank you. And Ashley, thank you so much. I'm gonna miss you. Bye.
Hi, Corey.
Hey.
I don't have much of an update. which is probably good because I don't have much of an audience. No, no offense, not that you're not much of an audience. We had an open house for Wilson last night, which is really exciting. I'm living on the east side. I am so excited that we're getting that corridor finished, and sidewalks along there will be tremendous. And the roundabouts will be the first ones with actually protected bike lanes, not just buffered with paint, but actually protected, engineered. So it's going to be really exciting to see those, see how they work out, see how our maintenance department manages to keep them clear of the snow. I was going to make the comment about the curb ramps that I think the public would say we are going about this the right way, in that we are building more curb ramps, not necessarily just going after the non-compliant ones. I think that for taxpayers in general, any curb ramp is better than no curb ramp at all. And the priority should be places where there's no curb ramp at all, not in fixing the ones that are not compliant by a degree or two. I do understand that some of the non-compliant are those diagonal ones, which are in fact bad and dangerous. But either way, so I'm happy to see that we are plugging away at our curb ramps and doing better and better. And then I was really excited about the tens of thousands of feet of sidewalk that are coming up. We are just about to get IGA on the, which is intergovernment agreement for the North Corridor project, which means that things are finally starting to solidify and going to start actually building the things. So that will also be exciting to see how that comes out. Thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate your work, and thanks for letting me have a little time.
Yeah, my apologies that we ran a little bit late today. It's been a good meeting today, and a lot of information. My brain is very saturated right now, which is great. So thank you, and thank you for all that you do, Barbara, for us and for this advisory committee. Awesome. Well, with that, for next month's agenda, we do have, as Sharice mentioned, we do have some feedback on the consultants for the pedestrian master plan. So that'll be exciting to give some feedback on that. We'll also have some additional conversation along with the charter and the revisions to that. Is there, I guess, Ashley, at this point, you're the last COBAAC member, and unfortunately you won't be joining us next month. But so we'll I'll touch base with the group here and see if there's any other topics that we'd like to discuss. But seeing how today we ran a little bit over, perhaps that is good that we have a little bit of an open time slot to be able to have some more in-depth discussion. So.
Well, and if I may, Nick, so it sounds like this next meeting in May would be a really great time to have someone from CET attend. So I just wanted to see if there would be any issues with me sharing the meeting info with my colleague, Rachel Zackham. She's our planner, because I think that she would be very interested in hearing and just kind of learning more about the pedestrian plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll pass it on to her. Lisa, is there anything that, should I put her in touch with you about getting the meeting information?
Yeah, me or Sharisa. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And we appreciate all that you've done. And it's just been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it too. I'm very sad about leaving, but I will be sure to do my homework and get you those notes, Teresa. So thank you, everybody. It's really been a pleasure.
Florida.
Yeah.
Florida.
I
Ashley.
know. I know. My husband and I, our families are on the East Coast. We came
Oh.
out here for him to start the aviation program at COCC, and he finished, and we're just kind of, I don't know, like it's kind of a good time to transition and do something new. And so we figured we couldn't really go further away, like in
No,
the
you couldn't.
continental United States. So yeah. So anyway, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Asha. All right. Well, with that, we wish you the best of luck, Ashley. And with that, we'll adjourn our meeting for this April 28th, 2022 meeting at 2:53 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nick.
And have
Thanks,
a
everyone. See ya later.
have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
You guys.
I want to cry right
What
now.
do you want? Can we stop the recording?
No. Yeah. Where is it? No. Stop. There we go.
So on my end, I'm still seeing recording up in the top. Do you want me to try pushing recording on my end?
This is stop recording. Yeah, could you? Oh, it finally popped up.